No one notices it at first. Most people don't believe in demons because they've never seen one. That's what they tell themselves. But almost everyone has known someone who changed. Not slowly, not predictably. Someone who crossed a line and sadly never quite came back. The face was familiar. The voice was familiar. But the atmosphere around them felt different, like a room after a storm, when the air is charged and you can't explain why. You can call it stress, trauma, addiction, mental illness. Sometimes it is. But sometimes the explanation doesn't fit the shape of what happened, because the stories that keep surfacing, quietly, reluctantly, share the same spine. Different people, different lives, different levels of education, different worldviews, and yet the pattern repeats like a fingerprint. Not symbolism, not a bad vibe, not a dream. An encounter. And almost everyone who has one says some version of the same thing afterward. It didn't look like the movies. It didn't act chaotic. And it didn't feel like it arrived. It felt like it had been there. These accounts rarely begin with belief. They begin with dismissal. A former skeptic who bought a game as a joke. A nurse who watched a patient's eyes lock onto nothing and speak like someone else was reading lines. A soldier who came home fine until the night terrors turned into conversations. A kid who tried a ritual challenge on a phone because it was trending and then stopped sleeping for a week. If you're watching this because something already feels off, you'll want to stay with this series. Different entry points. Same aftermath. They don't usually say, "I saw a demon." They say things like, "It knew things it shouldn't have known. It reacted to prayer. It hated certain words. It watched me. It wasn't angry like a person. It was cold. It felt ancient." Witnesses struggle here because language breaks down. They describe awareness before sight, pressure before form. Like realizing someone has been standing behind you in a dark room for a long time, not moving, not breathing loudly. Just present. And when you turn, the fear isn't the face, it's the certainty that it was listening the entire time. Here's where discomfort sharpens, because these stories don't happen in haunted castles. They happen in apartments, in dorm rooms, in cars on empty roads, in bedrooms with the door locked, in a glow of screens at 2:13 a.m. when someone says, "Modern people like to believe the spiritual world is sealed off from normal life." But the testimonies don't place it out there. They place it right here, near ordinary routines. And the common thread isn't belief, it's participation. People assume disbelief is armor. Witnesses learn otherwise. Several accounts include a detail that should bother you. The presence seemed amused by disbelief, as if denial makes access easier, as if resistance requires recognition and disbelief removes resistance entirely. This is where the viewer should feel something uncomfortable in the stomach. If belief is not required, then the question becomes terrifyingly practical. What counts as a door? Not a pentagram on the floor, not a hooded ceremony. Because in many testimonies, the shift doesn't happen during the activity. It happens afterward. Sleep fractures. Nightmares become patterned. The room feels crowded when it's empty. A sudden fixation on self-harm, rage, porn, despair, like intrusive thoughts with a voice behind them. A hatred of prayer that shows up in someone who never cared about prayer before. The most unsettling part isn't fear, it's interference, like something has begun to edit your life. Before anyone called these things demons, there was conflict that didn't begin on earth. Order existed until it didn't. Authority stood until it was challenged. Peace held until rebellion decided it would not. War erupted where war should not have existed. Light collided with defiance. Loyalty met pride. A commander advanced, another resisted. They clashed. Wings thundered, power surged. Force met force like a storm colliding with a mountain. There was no negotiation, no compromise, no stalemate. The rebellion lost. They were driven out, not destroyed, dislodged, cast down, removed from where they belonged. No place remained for them there. They fell, not metaphorically, not symbolically. They fell out of place. And here is the part that creates dread if you sit with it. What happens to beings that once stood in the heights when they are hurled into the lower place? They don't become human. They don't become harmless. They don't forget what they were. They arrive displaced, unwelcome, restless, and they do not love the world they were forced into. What people are encountering didn't start with them, and it doesn't end here. This is where modern testimony and ancient warning begin to overlap, without anyone trying to make them match. Witnesses rarely describe chaos. They describe intelligence, restraint, mockery without humor, authority without warmth. Not like an animal, more like a strategist, a presence that tests boundaries, that studies patterns, that waits for habits to form. Several people describe the same physical sensations, not always, but often enough to notice. A sudden heaviness in the chest, a pressure in the ears, a temperature shift, a smell that doesn't belong. A sense of being watched from above or behind, even when the room layout makes no sense. And then, the turning point. Almost every testimony has it. Not when fear peaks, but when resistance appears. A name spoken, a prayer attempted, a scripture remembered imperfectly, stumbled over, not performed. The reaction is immediate. Not panic, irritation, rage without shouting, mockery like a grin you can feel more than see, withdrawal that feels like a threat, not a retreat. As if the presence is not afraid of being noticed. It is offended by being challenged. That distinction matters, because it suggests hierarchy. It suggests order. It suggests a conflict older than your lifetime. If these entities are ancient and intelligent and displaced, then the most disturbing question is not, do they exist? It's this: how do they get access in a world that doesn't believe in them? The testimonies keep pointing to the same answer. They don't need you to worship them. They don't need you to name them. They need you to participate, to dabble, to invite, to open. And doors don't always look like doors. Some look like entertainment. Some look like curiosity. Some look like, I just want to feel something. That's why so many accounts begin with the same line. It was just a game, a board on a table, a ritual challenge on a phone, a guided meditation that promises contact with guides, a fascination with the occult that starts as aesthetics, a joke that turns into a pattern. And then later the person can't explain why their house feels hostile at night, why their child suddenly screams at the mention of prayer, why their thoughts feel foreign, why the darkness feels populated. This isn't about superstition. This is about consent, especially uninformed consent. Here is the pattern that refuses to go away. People don't say, I summoned something. They say, I noticed something. As if the danger was never in reaching outward, but in realizing something had already been close. Studying, watching behavior, learning habits, waiting for the smallest invitation. Not always to destroy, to influence, to attach, to whisper, to steer. To have authority. And the most chilling possibility is this: if they were cast down, then Earth is not neutral ground. It is contested ground they want to control. And you don't have to believe in a war to be standing in the middle of it. This has been episode 1 of the series, Demons Among Us. In the next episode, we will confront what most people refuse to admit until it's too late. Most doors are opened by people who think they're safe. People who think disbelief makes them untouchable. People who think harmless means risk-free. We'll follow the trail through games, rituals, and modern play that doesn't look like worship, until something answers back. Because once the door is opened, the question isn't whether anything heard you. It's whether anything was already waiting. This was episode 1. The story continues. Subscribe to continue the series. Next, they open the door.
Cheers.